Shiva, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. So in the last class, we're actually discussing about the faster RCNN. So in one line, what is the drawback of fast RCNN? From RCNN, we're sending each box to CNN, another box to CNN. Like this is at 20,000 times the CNN has to run. That's a problem. Then we overcome this problem in fast RCNN by sending the entire image instead of the image in the box, and then combining the outcome of whatever the output that I get by sending the entire image. Let me call that as a feature map. On the feature map, I'm proposing boxes. Earlier, I proposed boxes on the input image. Now I'm proposing the boxes on the feature map. Feature map is the reduced version of the image what I have given as input. Then followed by the ROI pool to ensure that everything is having the same sized, so that I'll be having same number of weights. I'm not saying that they'll have same values of weights for every image that is sent, but I'll have same number of weights so that retraining would be very good. So, and finally, I'll be having the required classification as well as regression. But what is the problem with this? The problem is the proposed boxes that I have are still using selective search, are still using selective search. Again, selective search is definitely a time consuming job because I generally propose 20,000, 30,000 boxes if I just use selective search, which doesn't make sense. Now, somehow, what people came up with is they introduced another version of RCNN called faster RCNN, which actually tells that why can't they do even proposing the boxes with CNN. As I'm doing the rest of the stuff with CNN, why can't even propose the boxes with CNN? So the idea is perfectly fine, the absolutely wonderful idea, but how do we actually structure that is very, very important. Let us see that. Let us see how can we do that. So input image, I'm just giving it. And once I have given that input, what I have to do is I will send this to some VGG or some other the standard architecture that you are familiar. Let me send that. I don't have any issues. And once you send that, you know that you will get the feature map as usual. You really get the feature map as usual. And what exactly you have to do here actually, this feature map, let me be very, very precise, very, very precise, instead of writing general flow. Once I apply VGG, you would supposedly get a output of size 60 cross 40, which is of depth 512 if you just see the VGG. Now if this is actually sent to a 3 by 3 convolution layer, is sent to a 3 by 3 convolution layer, and this is then sent to 1 by 1 convolution, and this is sent to one other 1 by 1 convolution. This 1 by 1 convolution will tell whether whether the anchor box that I proposed is having any the anchor box that I proposed is having any object or not. That is called objectness score. Now what is anchor box? It's very, very simple. See, you'll have the feature map here, right? You'll have feature map. This is a feature map, 60 cross 40 whatever. This is a feature map. Now for each pixel, centering each pixel, you draw multiple boxes. You draw multiple different sized boxes, and each box is called as anchor box. Okay, so in fast RCNN, what they have decided is they came up with a final conclusion that they can draw nine anchor boxes for each pixel in the feature map. For each pixel in the feature map. What is feature map? It's the output of CNN for each pixel in the feature map. Okay, now each box I'm sending to a 3 by 3 convolution layer, then sending to 1 by 1 convolution, then again parallelly sending to one other 1 by 1 convolution layer. So now what exactly this particular guy has to do? It has to predict what object do exist. It's not worried about, it is very, very important. It's not worried about what object it is there, what object I have in the box. For example, if I'm sending one box to this one by one convolution layer, it will tell whether some object exists or not. Whether it can be car or bus or horse, it doesn't matter. So whether some object exists or not. For example, if I'm saying 0.9, that means some object exists. I'm not sure what is that object. I'm just telling that it's some object. Or otherwise, if I say it's probability 0.1, then it is an indication that no object exists in that box. Then it may be a part of the background. Some background is there, and I'm not interested in drawing the bounding boxes around the background. So I'm interested in drawing the bounding boxes around the objects. So that's the main theme for this, with the objectness code that we have here. And what about this guy? Actually, this guy will give you the four coordinates, Nana. This guy will give you four coordinates, for each object score, for each objectness score, greater than from threshold. Okay, for example, I have one box and the probability of some object existing is assume that 0.8, and I have some other box where the probability of some object existing is 0.2. Now my threshold assume that it is 0.5. Since 0.8 is greater than 0.5, then I'll pass that boxes to this convolution layer. Otherwise, I don't pass for everything. Okay, only when a box objectness score is greater than some threshold, here it's 0.5, then I'll send that information to one by one convolution saying that I want the coordinates of this box where you got 0.8. So I want the coordinates to be listed out. Okay, in this case, it's less than 0.5. I don't send this information to my one by one convolution layer. So because I don't want the box coordinates because there is no object in that box. So this is the main theme. Okay. So this is perfectly fine, but do I have any issues here? This is just proposing boxes, Nana. Earlier, I have used selective search for proposing these boxes. Now what I'm trying to do, I'm just taking every pixel of my VGG output and drawing 9 boxes, and I call that as 9 anchor boxes. Okay, and for each box, you're trying to calculate objectness score. If the objectness score is greater than some threshold, then you're trying to get the coordinates of that box. Okay, so now if we are done with proposing the boxes. Okay, perfectly fine. Now, after this, we get all the boxes, all the different sized boxes where there is high chance of having some object, which there's a high chance of having some object. Okay, perfectly fine. Now, what I do is, this is just to get the boxes, but what I have to do at the end, I have to draw the bounding boxes, and I also need to identify what is the object in that bounding box, right? So for that, what I do is again use VGG here. Again use VGG here. Okay. Again, I would get some output. Since it's a VGG, the output would be 60 cross 40, and the depth would be 512. Now, what I have to do? I have to project whatever the output that I have. What are the output here? The boxes are there now. These proposed boxes have to project on what? This output. And once I project different sized boxes on the feature map, what happens? You'll get obviously different set of weights, but I don't want that. Again, the same logic where you have applied fast RCN, the same concept. Guys, I'll tell you a secret here. Only this part of the network is different in faster RCN. Only the upper part where I have highlighted is the only difference. The below part is exactly fast RCNN. So that means faster RCNN is actually, this is technically called as RPN, Nana. Technically called as RPN, region proposal network. Region proposal network. Why it's called network? Because I have a sequence of convolution operations and region proposal. Where I'm proposing here, I'm proposing here. And why it's called region? What is region? Region is nothing but box. So box proposal network or a region proposal network. So faster RCN is basically RPN plus fast RCN. So this equation, if you remember, it is easy for you to remember, get connected with this for a long time. Fast RCN is basically RPN. RPN is the upper part, fast RCN is the below part. That's all. So I'm just drawing the below part, which is nothing but which is nothing but fast RCN. Again, once I have an ROI pooling, what you used to do I used to have fixed size boxes. For each box, you'll begin sending to some convolution layers and max pooling layers, and used to get two outputs. For each box, you'll be sending to fully connected layers only. Fully connected layers, all are fully connected layers. Once you have an ROI pool output, you'll be sending to a set of fully connected layers to get the object name, that was present in this boxes, and also to get the adjusted coordinates. Okay, sometimes I may not be able to identify the object name. Maybe I could identify that there is some object I could identify, but I'm not sure what is that object with high confidence. Maybe I say that 30% is confident that it is car. It doesn't make sense. I want more confidence. Then what has to be done? The coordinates should be adjusted. In the first case, in the first epoch, the loss will be very, very high because I could not cover the true bounding box, because I know the true bounding box. It's very, very important. I know these are the boundaries for a cat because I annotated, but I'm making my system understand the box coordinates in a much more generic way, because I will not even supply the test data with annotations, right? Only the training data I annotate and supply. So you have to think in that direction. What happens if I don't annotate during testing? In testing, what happens? There's no annotation for that. So it again, the proposals will come from the region proposal network, and all the proposals will be sent to ROI pooling, and all the proposals will have a fixed size, and they'll be sent to fully connected layers, from which the object name is identified, from which the coordinates will be adjusted, because the proposed boxes may not cover the entire object. The adjusted coordinates will help you to adjust the X, Y, W, H, and ensure that it covers the entire object. So this is a basic idea of faster RCNN. Okay, now one very important thing is, if you want, if I think by now you should get a doubt, sir, why you are naming this as an anchor box? See, the explanation, if you see why they're called anchor boxes, it's not there anywhere, but I'll tell you the reason. See, the anchor box, the name of anchor box is actually given because, see, you know the basic meaning of anchor, right? It's a hook. Similarly, I'm not actually trying to find the exact coordinates. I'm trying to find the adjusted coordinates. So that means it's nothing but a hook, right? So for example, if my true X is equal to adjusted coordinates, adjusted X, or maybe because coordinates will be X, Y, W, H. So I'm saying that true X is equal to adjusted X given plus proposed X. Now true X is 10. Okay, proposed X is 8. That means your regression model will give you 2. So that the total will be equal to 10. Okay, so why I always need to focus on adjusted X? Because you're not supposed to draw the bounding box on the feature map. You're supposed to draw the bounding box on the image. So the image, on the image I annotated. So then when I annotate on the original image, the X value is 10. The proposed is 8, which is with respect to feature map. But this adjustment is with respect to the true image, where I get the true X. Similarly, the same logic applies with Y, W, X. How beautifully the concept has been designed. If you start predicting directly the X value, you will not be able to do a scale invariant translation. So this is a perfect example of scale invariant. I don't bother about the image size. I just predict what could be the adjustment from the proposed box, and I'll be reaching to the true X, because true X I know because I annotated from the data set. So this is the main theme of predicting the adjusted coordinates, and the reason for calling this as anchor box because of that. So anchor, the main anchor meaning is also the same thing, because you're not going with original values, you're going with the hook values, that is nothing but adjustment values, and that is the reason for each anchor box you're getting the adjusted coordinates. That's the reason they're called as anchor. For each box you're getting adjusted coordinates, and that's the reason it is called as anchor box. Okay, fine. So this justification is really not required, but it helps you to remember the concept for a long time. Enough. The beautiful concept. Enough. I'm done. See, something is missing here. See, okay, sir, I think you started with RCN, sir. Then you have given that, some drawback here and taken to fast RCNN. In fast RCNN or RCNN, they use selective search, which is definitely time consuming job. So I want to ensure that time consumption is drastically reduced. Now this is avoided with RPN. RPN is basically CNN. So that means the entire fast RCNN uses CNN to propose, even to propose the boxes. Propose boxes is done with CNN, and for classifying the objects, for classification I'm using CNN. For regression also I'm using CNN. See how beautifully I completed my entire object detection with single architecture. Complete object detection with single architecture called CNN. So how beautifully it is done. You understood? Okay. But I think, sir, from the beginning you're telling that, okay, I pass. You remember the general flow of a deep learning. I pass some input data, it can be image, it can be audio, it can be video, whatever. And I send it to some architecture. Some architecture, it can be CNN or DNN, RNN, whatever. And I get some output. Okay. Once I get, this is predicted output. It's not like a program, C is equal to A plus B. I get A is 2, B is 3, and C is equal to 5. And that's an actual output. But always the output in the deep learning or any machine learning will be predicted output. Since it's a predicted output, it cannot be always equal to the true output. Okay. So till the time that it reaches true output, I have to change the algorithm or tune the algorithm. In our case, what we have to first see how good the predictions are. How do I know? Loss function. So if the loss is very high, what should I do? You know that you need to back propagate. Okay, and again forward propagate, update the weights, backward propagate. You understood the same sequence. Once I have a heavy loss, you need to update the weights using back propagation. Again, you forward propagate with updated weights. Again, you calculate the loss. Again, you back propagate the back propagate and update the weights. So forward propagate on the updated weights, calculate the loss. If the loss is very high, again update the weights during backward propagation. So this is an iterative process that you already know. So that means this process will remain the same. See how beautifully from the beginning we are learning that whenever you have a loss, just apply back propagation. Just apply back propagation with various variants of gradient descent. Oh, perfectly. The updating weights is like common for any architecture in deep learning. Majority of the architectures, we just use the variant of gradient descent. Maybe the new variants of gradient descent are coming, but we try to use a standard gradient descent only, unless until there is a requirement. We tend to use the state-of-the-art gradient descent algorithms for updating the weights. But guys, you will realize, there are some research papers where, for example, they use a very basic architecture and they publish their paper just because they have come up with a new loss function. Maybe they identified that the existing loss function for that application, for a particular application, existing loss function is not actually quantifying the loss, is not properly quantifying the loss. So it is giving some prediction, but that predictions are, I'm not able to quantify how good the predictions are for a particular application. Then there are even researchers from Google who came up with just a loss function and published a paper. So loss function introducing is also very important, guys. Now, in this case, if we have discussed everything in the architecture point, we have discussed RCNN, fast RCNN, and faster RCNN, and we got output in terms of the object name, in terms of the box coordinates. But how good I am in terms of my predictions, because you have two predictions. One is the object name that is there in the box and the coordinates of the box. You have two outputs here. Now, if I may commit a mistake with the object name, I may commit a mistake with the coordinates. So whenever I commit any mistake, either of them or both of them, I need to calculate the loss. Then how do I do? We'll see that. This is a beautiful equation. Let us first do that. First, let me write it, Anand, and then I'll help you out to understand. So, Pi Ti you'll see the same equation in the original paper. So first, when you read this paper, you'll find little weird. But once we are done with the explanation, if you just look at the original research paper, it will be very easy for you to understand. First, let me write the equation, then I'll come back to the explanation part. At the initial look, it looks daunting, but it's not that much complex. I'll debug everything, I'll decode everything, and then I'll help you out. I'll tell every letter of this. Again, you'll not find in the internet. Even in the research paper is meant for the experts, not for the students who are very naive. So they'll not give any final details. Let us try to understand this. Okay, so what I do is first I'll rewrite this equation in a more simpler way. Okay, then I'll come back to the above one and I'll explain everything. Now I can say that my loss is equal to CLS of P comma P star plus P star of L1 smooth T minus T star. Now let us understand this first, the second equation. Then because second equation is first equation, both are same, Nana. But second equation is little simpler than the first one. First we'll understand the second one, then we'll come back to the first one. Okay. So here, what is P? P is actually a predicted probability being whether an object exists or not. That means, what is the probability that the proposed box is having some object? Okay, proposed box is having some object. So it can be assumed that 0.9, then obviously object exists in that box. If it is 0.1, maybe since it's it's less than 0.5, then there is no object in the box. Okay, so this is the probability, predicted probability of the object, or simply to be precise, it's an objectness score. Then what is the next thing? This is actually true. True, that means if whether an object exists or not. So always, you know, the true distribution is either 0 or 1. 0 in the sense no object in that proposed box. I know that, okay, because I annotated it. And the other one is object is present. Object is present in that proposed. Okay, so after this, the next equation that you see here is T minus T star. What is T here? T is basically 4 parameters of bounding box, x comma y comma, maybe I'll write like this, x predicted, y predicted, w predicted, h predicted. Then what is T star? This is x actual, y actual, w actual, h actual, h actual. Now you're just taking the difference. Why I'm not taking the squares of this as squared error loss? See, if you observe clearly, I've used the word smooth and I've used L1. What is L1? It's L1 loss. What is L2 loss? It's a squared loss. If you take T minus T star square, it's a squared error loss or L2 loss. Okay, I'm not taking L2 loss, I'm just using L1. Why I'm taking L1 here? Because it's smooth. Because it is smooth. Why it is smooth? Because see, the squared error loss is always sensitive to outliers. Is always sensitive to outliers, but L1 is not sensitive to outliers. So that's the reason it's smoother to the outliers. So that's the reason I've used L1, and that's the reason I've used the word smooth. Okay, so now you understood what is L1 smooth, T minus T bar or T star. Okay, now the most important thing is this. Now the most lovable thing is this P star. Why I have to keep P star here? Why I have to keep P star in this equation? See, you're trying to get the loss, of the classification, get the loss of regression, get the loss of classification, and get the loss of regression. That's perfectly fine. But why I have to add P star? It's very simple. If there is no box, P star is basically either no object or object is present. It's either 0, 1 because it's a true predictions. It's a true values. If at a particular proposed box, the true label is 0, then doesn't make sense to go for calculating the coordinates or identifying the adjusted coordinates for that box. Whether the box is this or whether the box is this, the basic box do not have the object. And why should I consider that wrong predictions? Why should I consider the wrong predictions for the final loss? Because I know that there is no object in this box. Okay, in the box that I proposed, there is no object. And if there's no object, then why should I consider that? Okay, that is the reason. If P star is 0, that means no object, this entire thing becomes 0. If P star is 1, that means there exists some object. Then you start finding out the difference between true coordinates and the predicted coordinates and try to adjust by updating the weights over a period of time. Okay, so this is a simplified equation now. This is simplified equation. Now let us come back to the above equation now. Slowly we'll understand. Now see, sorry. P is the same thing. The same thing that you see here is here. Now what is the difference here between that? You see PI. PI and PI star. What is I here? I stands for anchor box number for a particular cell. It's actually an anchor box. So P1 anchor box, P2 anchor box, P3 anchor box. For every box that you propose, the corresponding object exists or not is the basic idea. Okay. Now again, here if you see both are same. Again the same concept here. Pi, Ti minus Ti star. So again for a particular box, anchor box I, what is the corresponding predicted coordinates and proposed coordinates? Okay, and Pi star, that for a particular box. Now people generally don't explain this. What is this, Nano? Here, what is 1 by n CLS? N is actually used, NCLS is basically set to 256. Sorry, set to 256. NCLS is set to 256. What is this 256? It's actually a mini batch size. Mini batch size. Okay, that means you take every 256 images as one mini batch and you divide that, because I'm calculating for every box. And why do I have to divide with 256? Because I want to normalize my loss or my mini batch. That's a 256. And if you see here, sorry, if you see here this n log, what is n log? N log is basically number of anchor locations. Number of anchor locations. So on a VGG, you take the final output and start proposing 9 boxes for every pixel. You would get around 2,400 boxes for the entire image, entire feature map entire feature map of the VGG. If it's not VGG, you'll get different number of, it can be increased or it can be decreased depending on the base network that you use. In our case, we're using VGG, and for output of VGG, in every pixel, I take 9 boxes, and you multiply, you do minimal calculations, approximately you'll get 2400 boxes. Now, what is this? The last parameter here, lambda. Why I have to use lambda here? See, lambda is actually a smoothing parameter. Smoothing parameter. It is generally set to 10. It is generally set to 10. Again, the question is why 10? It's the intuition is they want to ensure that 256 when multiplied with 10, of course it is greater than 2400, will be approximately equal to 2400. Approximately equal to 2400. Of course, it's not 2400, it will be like 2560, but that 10 can be like, it can even reach to 11, sometimes 9, but it will be, you can set the optimal lambda or a smoothing constant such that it is so close to the number of anchor locations. Like that, the smoothing constant lambda can be adjusted. Okay, I think somebody unmuted. So who's the guy who unmuted? Okay. Fine. So this is the entire equation. Now the equation makes sense. Can I just erase the bottom one and you just look at the upper one only? Now see, everything remains so good because you understood everything. 1 by NCLS sigma LCLS of Pi comma Pi star plus lambda and n log sigma Pi L smooth Ti minus Ti star. How beautifully it was derived. So this is the loss function that we use for RCNN based models. Okay, once I have the loss, if this loss is greater than some value, maybe greater than some threshold value, which is not small, then you start back propagating and update the weights. Again, forward propagate, backward propagate, forward propagate, backward propagate, epochs, till the time that you have correct classification, correct regression coordinates, you repeat the process. That's all. Now, the next question is, sir, finally, you have made us to learn from RCNN to fast RCNN to faster RCNN, and told that this is the best family of RCNN. But this is the best algorithm in RCNN family. But do I have any drawback in this? Can you think of some drawback in this? I think it's difficult for you, but think. Because I removed the most time consuming module, that is selective search, from faster RCNN. Other than that, what else I can do here? Any drawback here is there here? If you can tell it, it would be awesome, guys. I doubt it, but try. Is there any process that I can actually improve in the fast RCNN? Think the diagram that I've drawn. Maybe I'll just take you through the diagram. Where is the diagram? So yeah, here. If anything, I can just optimize. The upper part is region proposal network. The bottom part is fast RCNN. Combined, it's fast RCNN. Can I optimize anything? Think, because I already optimized a lot of things by the time that I reach fast RCNN. But there is still a drawback, a big drawback. I'll tell you. I think it's difficult for you to tell. Let me tell you. What is it? So the drawback is actually the RCNN family is actually a two-staged family. Two-staged family of object detection. That means it has to follow two stages. Stage 1 basically is to propose boxes. Yes or no? Where you have seen RPN, for example, it proposes boxes. After proposing the boxes, you're going for classification of the object in that, and you're also drawing the bounding box around it. That's regression. So that is, you need to go with these two boxes in a serial fashion. Okay, so unless until you propose all the boxes, you can't go for the classification regression. Okay, so that means, why should I go for two-stage process? Can I reduce this and make it a one-stage process? One-stage process? How do I do it? One stage. I need to merge this. I'm not saying that I will remove proposed boxes. This is very, very important. The student get confused here. I'm not saying that I'll remove proposed boxes phase, but I'm saying that somehow I'll merge the stage 1 and stage 2 in a single stage so that they perform faster. Okay. Okay. Have to merge, but they need to be a little faster even after merging. Otherwise, just for the sake of merging, if I merge and there's no like fastness in, like, there's no fastness added, doesn't make sense. So I need to combine this somehow. I need to have one stage. That's a basic idea by taking the reference of these two stages. Okay, we'll see that. For that, actually, we have a family of variants, many variants, Nana, actually called single shot algorithms. Single shot algorithms we have. As the name itself, single shot. These are double shots. You're getting another drink in your mind, right? The drink in your mind. Double shots. This is actually double shots algorithm because I completely do this with two stages. Short is considered as stage here. Okay, so the above one is double shot based algorithms, but I want a single shot algorithms. Okay, for that actually we have two algorithms. One is SSD and the second one is YOLO. This SSD is not part of our syllabus. It's not part of our syllabus, but this is the first single shot algorithm that was introduced, and after that YOLO variants, YOLO V1, in the YOLO V1, YOLO V2, YOLO V3, YOLO V4, YOLO V5, okay, are introduced. So first we'll see the SSD, then we'll jump into YOLO. Okay, so if I complete this, your module is almost done. Okay, I'll show the syllabus and I'll tell you what you have to do next. Okay, first let us see. The single shot algorithm is SSD, single shot detector. It's very, very close to the category. So this algorithm name is also very, very close to SSA. This is my SSA, right? This is SSA. So this is SSD. That's all. Okay. The very, very close to the category name. Okay. Enough understanding this is very, very important. It's extremely important. Let us see that. So firstly, obviously, I have to take the input image. Let me just draw that input image. The input image size is assumed that it is 300 cross 300, 300 cross 300 with depth of 3 channels. Now, I just apply. I'll tell you slowly how there's a beautiful concept involved in this or embedded in this. What I have to do is actually I just apply VGG16. I just apply VGG16 as a feature extraction. I just want to extract the features or the feature map. Now, in one of the convolution layers, in the VGG, if you remember the architecture, you'll have, and in between you'll have convolution layer 4. Convolution layer 4. Okay, convolution layer 4, you'll have 3 of them. Continuously, you'll have 3 of them. convolution layer, from fourth layer to seventh, you'll have three convolutions. Okay, so actually the convolution layer 4, the output of it, see, understanding is little difficult here, but slowly I'll try to decode. Whatever the intermediate output that you have from VGG60, what are the intermediate output that you have from VGG16? It's not very far, but it's actually in between. So the intermediate output of VGG16 is sent to the final output directly. This final output actually identifies what is the objectness score. That means this guy will just give you a certain boxes. See the VG16, what are the feature map? This is a fully connected layer. The fully connected layer gives the objectness score for each box that it proposes. Okay, so now, sir, where are the boxes, sir? You're just passing the image to the some convolution layer and you're getting some out. You're telling that you connect that directly to fully connected, because VG16 will not end at CONV4. VG16 will not have only 4 convolution, will not have only CONV4. Will not have only 4 convolution layers. It will have many convolution layers. Okay, so but you're directly saying that intermediate output is sent to fully connected layer. Okay, it's your wish, sir. If you want, you can send it. Okay, fine, I'll send it. But after that, what you are sending here, I'm sending the boxes. But where are the boxes? Where are the boxes? See, I'll tell you. How do I get the boxes on top of it? Actually, convolution layer output is actually intermediate feature map. This is not the final feature map. It's an intermediate feature map. So this feature map, I'm just drawing in a more elaborated way. This feature map, you'll have multiple pixels, right? You'll have multiple pixels. Now, I start proposing boxes for each pixel. I start proposing boxes for each pixel. Again, for each feature map, the number of boxes that I propose is not always 9. In the earlier case, for each pixel in the feature map, you used to propose 9. But the persons who have invented SSD came to a notion that why they have to use always 9 anchor boxes for each pixel in the feature map. Sometimes they use 4, sometimes they use 6, sometimes they use 9. So different anchor boxes will be there. Okay, different anchor boxes will be proposed. Actually, in SSD, if you read the research paper, they do not call this as an anchor box. They call it as priors. I don't know why they changed the name. They call the anchor boxes as priors. Okay, so do not get confused with the terminology. In the exam, whenever we ask the word prior, it is in the context of SSD by default. Okay, so but basically they are anchor boxes. Okay, so see, if you're comfortable with anchor box, let me just use the same word, anchor box. Okay, so now the anchor boxes will be drawn for every pixel in my feature map, but there a number of anchor boxes that I draw will not be always 9. It will vary. How? Like what is that variation? I'll tell you. Okay, because we are not bothered about what is the exact number of anchor boxes that I draw, but you need to know that for each and every pixel I'll draw some anchor boxes. Now that anchor boxes, that anchor boxes directly I'm giving to a fully connected layer, and for each anchor box, for each of that anchor box, I'll be getting an objectness score. That means whether some object exists in this box or not. How do I know? Can the fully connected layer give the objectness score? Yes, it can give. But this is fully connected layer. To get the objectness score, you should get only one neuron. You should only have one neuron, because in fully connected layers, you'll have multiple neurons, right? Multiple neurons. But objectness score is just a probability, some probability. That means single value. That means you need to again convert this, map all these things to a single neuron. This single neuron will give you the probability. Okay. So either you can do this, or what they have done is they have actually supplied this fully connected layer to a logistic regression model. To a logistic regression. You know, logistic regression model will give you the probabilities. We have discussed this in very high detail in advanced data analytics course, extremely high detail in advanced data analytics course. So in logistic regression, it will give you the probability 0.7 or 0.6 or whatever. If it is greater than some threshold, assume that in our case by default we'll take if it's greater than 0.5. Here it's 0.7. That means there is some object exists. Some object exists. Okay. Now, if some object exists, then what I have to do? I have to first classify the object name in that box. I have to classify the object name in that box. I have to classify the object name in the box, and I also have to draw the bounding box. Two problems: object class and the bounding box. This is another. These are the two problems that I've addressed. But actually, before I do this object class identification and bounding box, suddenly I find there are many problems. Okay, this is my final problem. Object class and bounding box have to predict. That's obviously my ultimate outcome. But while I'm thinking about just directly going for object class and bounding box, I'm finding that there are a lot and lot of problems. The first problem is, can anybody tell? The first problem is why I have taken only the intermediate output, why I have not completed the fully full VGG. Full VGG also need to be done now. After conf 4, you'll have conf 5, right? You'll have conf 5. Then what should I do with conf 5? If I'm predicting the boxes and predicting the class and bounding box, everything with conf 4, then what should I do with conf 5, which is the final convolution layer in my VGG? That means I preserved that for some purpose. For what purpose I preserved? And the other basic problem, the extremely typical problem that they faced is, this is a very, very interesting problem. And even in interviews we ask, without telling the algorithm name, we'll ask. For example, if this is the image, assume that I have a car here. I think that it is a car. Okay. So I have a car which is like a small car. Assume that I have another car which is very, very big. Now, actually, you'll realize, guys, before SSD and before YOLO, if you supply this sort of images to RCNN, it used to detect the small objects, but that means it used to draw a bounding box around the small objects, but it used to draw multiple bounding boxes around a bigger object, which should not be the case. I don't want that. I never want that. I just want only one bounding box to be drawn. This is the first problem that SSD will solve. But how? They observed that if they directly gave this output to this and check whether the object exists or not, and then propose the class and as well as regression coordinates, they could identify that only small objects I could draw the bounding box, but not for the bigger objects. So that means that's the reason I've kept the gap here. Using this gap, we will overcome that drawback. Okay, perfectly fine. But before overcoming, how do I actually get for every proposed box where the objectness score is greater than, or the objectness score is greater than, assume that 0.5. Where the objectness score is greater than 0.5, I'm about to give C plus R. What is C plus R? What is C plus R? C plus R is basically the classification label The classification probability distribution, it's not label. Of course, you cannot say, I cannot say that it's just label. It's a probability distribution of all classes, probability distribution of all classes, and R. So more about this, since I have time, let me just tell you that. What is C plus R? This is very, very important, very important in SST. Say, for example, in my entire data set, I have only five objects. Just assume that I have only 5 objects in my entire data set. And for every object, I have to draw the box. If my image has box, if my image has object 1, I have to draw the bounding box. If my image has second object, I have to draw the bounding box. If my image has 5th object, I have to draw the bounding box. So irrespective of the object, what are the 4 coordinates? Because I draw a box around any object, 4 coordinates are x, y, w, h. And also, I'll try to store the object score also, objectness score that I got from the previous layer. So totally, how many values I have? Totally, this is the 4 values, and objectness score is 1 value. So totally 4 plus 1 values plus this 5 objects. If I have, I'll have a softmax distribution 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, 0.60. Okay, so I have a softmax distribution of that probabilities. So that means for the object 0.6, maybe this is object car, I have the highest probability car. I have the corresponding objectness score. What is the probability of some object exist? Maybe 0.9. What is that object? It is car. And I have to, once I detect the car, I have to draw the bounding box, and the bounding box coordinates are x, y, w, h. Now see, Nana, this is a beautiful concept, guys, where I have a single output layer. It is actually predicting both classification and regression values. You realize, guys? It is actually, see, earlier in RCNN, I used to have a classification module, and I used to have a regression module separately. But now, it's just a very simple thought that they have. See, classification is also numbers. X, Y, W is also number, and the objectness score is also number. Then why can't I combine these? This is 5, this is 5. Totally 10 values will be there in the output neuron or output class, output layer. How beautifully they combine classification and regression. How beautifully they combine the classification and regression. So that means the final output will have the class distribution plus the regression coordinates plus the objectness score. Okay, technically it is written as like this. It is 4 plus 1 plus k classes. Because if you have k classes, you'll have distribution of k classes distribution. It is actually called as 5 plus k. 4 values for box coordinates, 1 value for the objectness score, and k is the distribution, softmax distribution. So totally how many values I'll have in the last layer? It's actually 5 plus k. But actually after doing this, I realized that I could detect only small objects in my image. I could not detect bigger objects. Then I have to change this architecture in a different way such that I can even detect bigger objects in the image. But how do I do that? We will see in the next class. Try to see in tomorrow's class. Okay, you understood what we are trying to do? Okay, a lot of things still need to be discussed, but I have given the glimpse of SSD. So, and then we'll slowly jump into YOLO. Hopefully, we'll try to complete YOLO in tomorrow's class. Okay, after completing SSD, so that we'll be mostly done with module 5, and from next week we'll hopefully start module 6. Okay, so let me stop recording, and I'll take your questions.